Hello guys, it's Randall with Bitraged. So I'm going to do a video here on Bitcoin, and I'm going to try and keep this short, but I want to talk about two things. First of all, I want to talk about just Bitcoin and where it's at and kind of where it may be headed, what the chart is looking like. But I also want to talk about economics and market trading, uh, supply and demand. And I think that's an important thing to understand because there seems to be a disconnect in a lot of people's minds on how markets work, how price action works, and there seems to be this idea that just having price action is all that matters. So all that you need is to see a price rise, and you don't need to understand why or what's behind it. You don't have to ask questions. You shouldn't ask questions. You should just take it. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. It's a very stupid thing to do. You should always ask questions. You should always understand what is moving price. The reason why so many people got caught in the Ponzi scheme BitConnect was because they didn't really care what was moving the price. They didn't really care why there was so much money going out, supposedly. And all they cared about was the idea of being able to get rich. Had more people ask questions and said, well, okay, so 1% a day, and that's compounded, and okay, this just seems like a little out of this world. If they'd asked the question, how in the world is this possible? It might have led them to some answers and they wouldn't have lost money. So my point in bringing that up is you have to understand what moves price. And a lot of different things can move price. But not everything that moves price up in a secure and strong way. And this movement that we've seen here, basically from the end of February, has not been a strong movement. It's not been a secure movement. It's not been a organic, natural movement. It's not been a movement supported by buyer sentiment. And I know I'm going to get flack for saying that, but it's the honest truth. Now, don't get me wrong and don't misquote me and don't post this nonsense comment saying I said something different. I did not say, I have not said, and I will not say that that means that Bitcoin cannot go up or will not go up. In fact, the truth is right now we're seeing bullish action. We just broke through 11,500, and I want to show you guys actually how important that is. Because I know there's a lot of people that really can't understand the concept that somebody can actually do a video and talk about what bulls have to do and what bears have to do, the obstacles each are facing. I think that that's reasonable. So we're looking at a 4-hour candle, and right here we have this was huge support, and this was huge resistance. It looks like we're possibly breaking through that. We have to actually see more action here to prove that. But it looks like we're actually breaking through that, which is definitely a good sign for the bulls. So this is huge resistance, huge support. The question is, this is a small area. The question we have to ask is, was this area so important? So if we quickly go backwards, I'm going to try and do this on let's do this on a 4-hour chart. So you can see more in 1 hour, so you can go look at that in the 1 hour if you want to, but we're going to look at this on alright, so if we go in the back in the past here, we're going to kind of ignore this area, even though it would still qualify, but it's not so important to look at. Alright, so we have our support area here and our resistance line here. So we cut through it here, and you could say that was a breakout, but it was a false breakout. So this actually becomes resistance. This area here, obviously support, obviously support, obviously support. So definitely some good support building there. Definite support, definite resistance, a large amount of resistance area here. Some false breakout, not legitimate. Definite support, large support area, resistance. We do break out, or we try to, and we immediately fall back, which is something to watch for, those type of things. Generally speaking, it's a bad sign, especially when you have an engulfing bearish candle after a false breakout. So definite was supposed to be support. It became resistance. Definitely a resistance zone here, support. We have wicks coming down, testing, but they can't break through. So a lot of, you can see in the past, a lot of support and resistance in those areas. That explains and it answers the question, because you have to ask these questions. Why were we bouncing around in this area? It seems like a very small area of about $500. Why was that so important to bounce around in? Why can't we break through one way or another? And it looks like right now we actually have, finally today, as I started this video, the high is 11,579, so we kind of broke through that psychological 500 point. The next step is actually 700. It's between 700 and 800 would be the level to look to break, to continue. So if we can't break through that, most likely we will see a daily bearish candle coming back down. So that would be the level to look at. But we have, if we're looking at the daily, it is still bullish and it is breaking above as we speak. And we still have a lot of time for this to unfold. We'll have to wait for that to actually conclude. So we could draw a trend line here on the bottom. Let me fix this. You could do that, or you could draw, again, I'm gonna have to fix that. You could draw either of those. You could do, because neither one of these have been validated yet. So we have to wait for, and we would continue to draw these out. So we would go up farther and out farther. All right. So what we would do is we would wait for our bullish that we are starting to test one of these lines, and once we get a definite test and a bounce off it, then we would have 3 points of contact, and we would validate that as a trend line. And a trend line with 3 validated points of contact that you didn't have to manipulate to make work is a very strong trend line. We've seen that in this bearish trend. It was extremely strong. In fact, we had where we tried to break out, and if you look at a smaller time frame, you see that there were breakout attempts that failed. So that would be what you would do for to begin the bottom of this upward trend line, if we are indeed in an upward trend line. It's important to realize that while you can consider this potentially to be an upward trend line, we just broke out. So I'm not downplaying that we are seeing bullish movement right now, and that is definitely a good sign. I really am for that, totally for that. But it doesn't mean you dismiss every bearish indication out there, right? So we still are looking at the possibility that this is still a bull trap. Still a possibility. It will still be a possibility until we hit 13,000. Okay. So obviously the potential for that would lower as, first of all, as we climb, but most importantly as buyer sentiment comes in. So if we saw a large buyer sentiment come in, just pushing the price up, let's say we could push above 13,000, and then we get a retracement and we kind of bounce off this line. That would be a huge indication for buyer sentiment that we're building a strong position here. So that's what we need to see. We're not seeing that yet. Volume has been down. I do anticipate that since we did break through this, that we should see volume pick up. We're at about 8,000, 9,000 on GDX, which is ridiculously low. And so I would expect coming out of the weekend, which is generally slow, that we would see the volume pick up, especially since we're seeing bullish movement. If we don't, it would indicate most likely we're probably not going to make much more progress because we just really need to see that buyer volume come in. So I want to talk a little bit here about volume and markets and market sentiment. So I read this article and I was just kind of taken aback by how ridiculous it is. Totally unresearched, total misunderstanding. But the idea is Bitcoin transaction volume decreases with batching, not due to lack of demand. And the idea that is pushed forward, and that I saw it posted on Reddit, and the idea that people are getting is that the reason volume is down is because Segwit and batch transactions, and that has nothing to do with trading volume. So when I tell you GDX and Bitphoenix and Bitstamp and what have you are down, that means trading volume is down. That means that right now we're literally trading between 8,000 and 9,000 Bitcoin on GDAX, which is ridiculously low. Has nothing to do with Segwit. Segwit doesn't enter into trading volume at all. Has nothing to do with it. Batching has nothing to do with trading volume at all. Doesn't affect it at all. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So while some of this is true, it is misleading, and it misleads people to believe that volume is actually higher, but it just looks lower because of batching, which is not true. Volume is actually low right now. It is legitly low. So anyone telling you volume isn't low is just in denial. So then people say, well, volume doesn't really matter as long as we have price action. Well, what you need to ask the question is, what is moving price action? Is price action being motivated and moved by a solid, secure backing? Is there something legitimate moving price action? If not, it may just be a manipulation of the market. So you have to be careful. I mean, there's a lot of people that they're blindsided and they see green and they're just like, well, it's moving up. So who cares why? Well, I care why. I want to know why. I want to ask questions. I ask questions. So why is it moving up? So let's talk a little bit about supply and demand, because there was that article we read, it talked about that it's basically saying there's still demand for Bitcoin, which I agree with. But let me give you a scenario here, and let's break down economics. So most of you, maybe you hated economics class, so let's break down economics. Let's talk about economics and supply and demand. Let's make it simple. So let's say that you own a store, and this is back in history a little ways, and you sell shovels. Maybe you got in a shipment of shovels. You have 500 shovels, and you realize after you got them in that the store down the street also sells shovels, and they have 1,000 shovels. But you also realize there's not that big of a demand for shovels. Maybe the demand is around 50 shovels, but it's not that great. So what do you think is going to happen to the price? Well, most likely it's going to push the price down, right? Because you have an overwhelming supply, but there's not the demand. There's not a need for that many shovels. Okay, so the supply doesn't change. Let's add another circumstance into the market. Suddenly, there is a gold rush. A bunch of people come into town, and suddenly there's still the same amount of shovels, but now there's a new demand for the shovels to find gold. Let me ask you a question. What's going to happen to the price of shovels? You can raise the price of those shovels, and people are still going to buy them because there's a perceived value in that shovel, that shovel is going to produce more value, right? So that produces price action. It produces price spike. It moves price up because demand exceeds supply. That's important to understand. Now let me add another factor. Let's say this is in California. All right, so California likes to pass laws. They like to legislate everything. So suddenly there is some legislation that's coming out, and it's regulating how you can use your shovel to dig for gold, and what you can do with your gold after you get it. All right, so that's a little scary. So that creates a little bit of uncertainty in the market, and people are unsure, is this going to really hinder the market? Now let me ask you a question. Is there still a demand for shovels? Yes. Does it necessarily mean that people will still be buying shovels or pay as much? Not necessarily. Because now suddenly we have a market sentiment that is uncertain. There's still demand because there's still a need for shovels to dig for gold, but there's uncertainty because the market is not sure of what the future holds, right? So it creates uncertainty. Let's add another factor. So the newspaper comes out, and the newspaper says that it is just fool's gold. There is no real gold. It is all fool's gold. There's nothing of value here. Now let me ask you a question. Is there still going to be a demand for shovels? Most likely not. Because most likely, if that news is believed, the demand for shovels is going to drop back down to or close to its original demand. And now because you saw the demand, you probably bought more shovels, so you have shipments coming in. So now and other people did, so now there's a greater supply. There's a greater supply, but there is not the demand. So now what you have is a situation where the demand has dropped off completely, just dropped, but now you have a huge supply. So this is going to push prices down. You'll have to lower your prices to sell the shovels. There's a couple points I want you to get from this analogy. First of all, just because the market is uncertain does not mean necessarily that demand has disappeared. You need to understand that there's a couple articles that have been circulating across mainstream news, and honestly, I wouldn't listen to too much that mainstream news says about anything, especially Bitcoin. Most of the time they're clueless. Most of the time they're clueless about anything, but totally clueless on Bitcoin. But anyways, there's a couple articles talking about how demand has dropped off for Bitcoin. I don't believe it, but I believe that the first part of our scenario is playing out in Bitcoin. The demand is still there, but I believe that there's uncertainty in the market, which has pushed trading volume down, which has pushed it down to the point that people are uncertain. They're uncertain whether they're afraid. They're afraid of maybe legislation or certain news, or maybe they're just uncertain if the market can hold a higher price, and they're afraid to buy in right now because they're afraid it will drop off again. Whatever the reasons are, I believe the demand is there, but I believe it's waiting. All right. Now, that's not in economics. You would break that down further, but there's no reason to make it any more complex here. So we're just going to still call it demand, but there is still a demand, I believe, for Bitcoin. And I believe that that demand is going to be seen. The action is going to be seen there at some point. And that point is going to be when we see this market sentiment return for buyers, and it's going to push the price back up in a way that can definitely be seen that buyers are supporting it. Right now, the market is not supporting the price. It's not supporting the position. This could change. Right, this level right here we're at that we're trying to break through is a good point to validate it. So once we break through this, a retracement back to this line would be a good validation. And what would really be good to see is something, which is kind of an interesting line, but something like that. All right? Because how far it goes up doesn't really matter too much, although this is probably the level it would drop off from. But either whether it bounces off the Fibonacci level or our trend line, whichever trend line turns out to be real, or the validated one, I would say most likely it would be this one. It would tend to add validation to where Bitcoin is at, to have that retracement and that confirmation, and then to continue up with preferably more volume coming into the market, because right now the volume is just not there because the buyer sentiment's not there. So technically you could say right now that the bulls are in control, although they're barely in control. Honestly, they're not in control by too much, and it wouldn't take too much of negative news or something of that nature to really push the price back down. That is why market sentiment is not fully on board with the buyers right now, because there is that fear that it wouldn't take too much to shift the market back into bearish. And honestly, there is some fear surrounding Tether and some other things. Tether is a huge one. When Tether blows up, we're going to lose 80% of the market most likely. So we have to watch for that. When that happens, most likely it's going to happen this year. It's a very good chance it's going to happen this year. And it's very unlikely that Tether will not go down. And when it does, we're probably going to lose 80% of the market. If that happens soon, we're going to see most likely $1,000 to $2,000 Bitcoin, just because you're going to lose 80%, plus you're going to have a panic. If we go back up to 20,000, we're probably going to, and Tether blows up, we're probably going to return to between 4,000 and 6,000. But again, you add panic, it's hard to really estimate. And if and when Tether does blow up, not only are we going to drop low, but most likely we're going to stay bearish the rest of the year. And we'd be lucky if we got out of it by the end of the year, just because Tether has connected itself so closely to the market that it's just going to take it down with it. So it's going to be a really hard thing for the market, but it's something that we have to anticipate because there is hardly any logical reason why we're going to get out of this with Tether not going down. So that's something we have to look at. So that's where we're at. We're looking bullish right now, definitely looking bullish. We finally broke through that psychological 11,500 point, which is definitely a good thing for the bulls. And now we're in this channel, or we will be in this channel if we break completely through. But we are looking at some heavy resistance coming up. I mean, it is some definite heavy resistance, definitely between 12,000 and 13,000, and specifically this line here. It's the biggest resistance we're going to hit. So if we can break through that, then we're definitely going to be looking more bullish. And I do believe if we were able to do that, that we would see buyer sentiment start to return. But that's the most important thing right now, is really to watch for that. And if that doesn't happen, the possibility of dropping to a new low is still possible. And even if not a new low, returning to a place of support like 9,500 is still a possible scenario, and it's not too far off the wall. You just have to gauge these things. You have to look at previous support and resistance. It's going to tell you a lot. That's what you guys got to look at, and it's going to tell you a lot about where the market is headed. But that's about it, guys. I need to head to bed because I have a lot of work to do. I'm heading to New Zealand here in a couple days. I'm not sure if I'm going to have good enough internet to be able to upload videos. If not, it's going to be on Joe to kind of hold the fort down. But if I'm not able to upload videos, I'm going to work on trading videos. At least that's the plan. So I will be working on stuff for you guys, but I just may not be able to upload things regularly. So that's kind of what my week's going to look like. So it's going to be very busy running up into that time. But I would encourage you guys to just really keep track of what's going on with the market here. And right now, looking quite bullish. And just see how this plays out and see if volume kind of follows this movement. That would be definitely a good thing we'd like to see. So we should at least return to 15,000 on GDAX. That would be a good sign. It would be something we'd like to see. So that's about it, guys. Hope you appreciated the video. If you did and you appreciated some of the more economical talk, I know I kind of dumbed it down a little bit. Just tell me what you think. If it helped you understand it maybe a little better, or if you want me to talk a little bit more about economics and supply and demand and market structure, market trading, all that stuff, would be happy to do that. Just let me know what you think. If you appreciated the video, please give it a like, and definitely if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button so you're notified when we do drop new videos. You don't want to miss that. Thanks so much, guys. Really do appreciate all your support, and hope that you have an awesome upcoming week. Take care, guys.